Hi, I'm Bob.
And I'm Stacy.
And
We are Two Cities. So our favorite things about our two cities, Fresno and Clovis, are probably that this is where home is. Bob's family lives here, and we've been here a long time. Another thing that we really like about Fresno and Clovis is that wherever we go, we usually run into somebody we know. So the cities have grown, but we've been here long enough that we still know people, and it still feels small enough. Micah and Erica and I worked on staff at another local church, and I met them then. And when they decided to come back to Fresno and start Two Cities, I had been without a local church and decided that I would come and support them in launching Two Cities.
And after we had started talking, and she had been talking about her church after I had asked her where she went. She went out of town one weekend. I went to check it out, and from the time I got out of my car and met the people as I was walking in the door, it was home to me.
Okay, so Bob and I met online through a dating app. So it was basically a blind date because we had not met yet in person.
We talked a lot, but we hadn't met yet.
And Bob works in retail, so that had been his busy time. So we finally decided the day after Christmas we would meet at Starbucks. I sent him a text to say, so I'm here. I'll be the one in the black cape and colorful scarf, thinking that was a perfect description of what I was wearing.
And I was already there in the car waiting on her, not knowing, she didn't know that, but when she said she was wearing a cape and a colorful scarf, all I pictured was this woman prancing around with this flying cape behind her. And I was ready to take off.
Meanwhile, I was in Starbucks. I'd bought my own drink and was sitting there waiting for it. And that's the story of how we met. I had volunteered. Eric had asked me, and I said, yes, I'd be happy to help do that. I'd had some experience with doing check-in before. So I help check in the kids every week or every 2 weeks or whenever I'm needed there. And Bob and I have been involved in, we've been a part of a small group probably almost the entire time we've been together at Two Cities. And we've enjoyed participating in the Easter egg hunt, which is a great opportunity to just serve people. And also we help to staff the booth at Clovis Fest. So Bob's been a type 1 diabetic, insulin dependent, for more than 30 years. We had dated for a couple of years, and he had been very honest with me about his health challenges. But of course, I fell in love with him, and I wasn't going to kick him to the curb because he had some health challenges. So he was fairly healthy, had been doing well, and he knew that kidney failure, kidney disease, was one of the complications of diabetes. So in the summer of 2017, he found that his kidneys were failing and he was going to need to have a kidney transplant. We were all quite surprised that his kidney failure had come along so rapidly. So we began the process of Bob going through all of the tests and all of the things that were necessary for a kidney transplant. Fortunately, he had a donor, his sister. So we did not have to go through that part of the waiting. But I think that we all expected, since he had a donor in his sister, that everything would be very quick. And I think even we were expecting it could be months, right? Mm-hmm. So it turned out to be closer to almost a year. I would say that's been the biggest challenge for us, was just that whole period of time where we were waiting. So it was early June, early summer when we found out, and then he had the transplant the following May. We were not married at the time, and so we went up to San Francisco to UCSF for the transplant, and the whole family came along. Both sisters, daughter, mom, we all stayed in a hotel together while Bob was in the hospital. It was quite the experience just to see how close their family was and how much they care for both Bob and his sister, who were both undergoing surgery at the same time. His kidneys had failed to the point where he did have to go on dialysis. Fortunately, it was only for about 6 weeks. And that was the scary part about the whole waiting time, was that he was on dialysis, and it's very hard on your body. So we were very anxious. That was one of the things that we were anxious about. Let's get this kidney before he has to be on dialysis for so long. In the midst of his time in dialysis, Instead of thinking about himself and the situation that he was in, he looked around and he said, I'm sitting in this chair for 3 hours and I see these people here and I can pray for them.
I spent a lot of time praying for each individual person that I saw there, and they'd come and go during the different shifts that I was there. And there was a young girl that didn't qualify for transplant, and I thought, what a life, that being so young and not knowing that your life's going to be shortened through all this, and all I could do was pray for her. And thank God for the situation that I had people willing to step forward and give me an organ, and family to support me, church family that prayed for me. I was truly blessed through this whole thing.
Bob went back to work, was healthy, regained almost all of his strength, and then, which was the plan all along, we went back to UC San Francisco and said, okay, now he's ready to have a pancreas transplant. So the pancreas was a donor pancreas. And so it was really interesting to walk through that scenario this time and know that someone had to die in order to give this organ to Bob so he could continue living. And I know that you struggled with that a bit.
I did. I remember the night before I was at the hotel room for the next surgery the next morning. It was really hard for me. I wanted to just say, let's just call this off. I don't want to speak.
With the pancreas transplant, Bob got placed on the list. He got activated on the list on Friday the 1st of March. And we anticipated that it would be anywhere from 4 to 12 months before an appropriate organ was available. We had discussed just briefly what might happen if he got an offer of a pancreas before our wedding. Not real seriously, but we thought, we should probably go and get our marriage license and just have it so we're, ready, because it would certainly be a lot easier if we were married first. 5 days after he got placed on the list, I was going back to work after lunch and I got a text from Bob that said, I have an organ. And my immediate response, I think I texted this back to him, was, okay, do you mean you have a pancreas or a musical instrument? Because that would be Bob's sense of humor. So I didn't hear back from him right away, and his sister Hope texts me and she says, is he pulling our leg or does he mean he has a pancreas? They had called from San Francisco. It was the call. They had a pancreas for him.
I was in shock. I had just sat down to eat my lunch at work and got the call. So I texted her and texted a mass text out to my family. And then first thing I started thinking of was, wait a minute, we need to get married. I remember thinking, okay, so how am I going to get this marriage license, and are we going to go through with this? And I remember texting Micah, what are you doing tonight? Asked him if he could come over and go through with this thing. And we met. I picked her up at work. We ran downtown. We were the last ones through the door to get the marriage license. Got it all taken care of. Had this fancy wedding ceremony. Family sitting on the floor, on the couches. Dogs running around.
Yeah, we got married and then we jumped in the car and drove to San Francisco. All this big build up, and they've got him in the gown and they've taken blood samples and all of that. And then they come in and they say, we're really sorry, but that pancreas is not going to work. And his family had they'd all come up again. We all decided we would just stay. We went out to dinner. We're sitting there at dinner, an Italian restaurant in North Beach, enjoying dinner, and Bob's phone was ringing, my phone was ringing, and I wasn't paying attention to it. Jackie happened, I think, she happened to notice her phone ringing and picked it up, and it was really good because they wouldn't have tried again. And so they said, wait, we have another organ for you. Did you get all the way home? And we said, no, we're still here in the city. They said, great, come back tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. So then back to the hospital. They were able to transplant that pancreas the next day.
Lots of challenges, medical challenges.
The operation, the surgery was successful, but he ended up being in the hospital for 2 weeks. But things were looking okay. They were a little concerned because generally after a pancreas transplant, the first thing that happens is his body starts producing insulin and he doesn't have to take insulin anymore. But his body wasn't producing insulin. So after 2 weeks, they sent us home and to recover and to hope that and pray that it would begin to produce insulin. But 10 days later,
he ended up getting an infection I went to a local hospital and was immediately put into a helicopter, and 45 minutes later I was in San Francisco, readmitted, sent home again. 10 days later I was put into an ambulance, driven straight back to San Francisco.
We went back to San Francisco, spent a week there, and thought we were coming home. They thought that things were going better. They'd gotten the infection under control. So it was a Sunday night. We thought we were going home the next morning. And then the pancreas specialist, who had been off for the week we'd been there, came in early Monday morning to tell me he was very sorry, but they were going to have to take the pancreas out. It wasn't working. He was getting very concerned about Bob's infection, and he probably did not go into surgery until close to 10 that night. They finally made it out of surgery, and then it was a big battle with controlling pain, dealing with really the disappointment. So it was 4 weeks. It was 1 month exactly from the time that he had the pancreas transplant till the time they took it out. And that meant basically we were back to square one. So everything that he'd been through was basically for nothing. So we made it through, came home, and it wasn't smooth sailing. Bob had some blood clots, had a lot of swelling in his right leg, ended up spending like another 10 days at a local hospital dealing with that. So it's not been an easy process, but we again have had so many blessings as a result of this whole health experience. And we're grateful that we've had those opportunities.
I'm Bob.
And I'm Stacy. And we are Two Cities.